Buenas tardes. Good afternoon. No. Good afternoon. Buenas tardes. Good to see everyone. We want to say, first and foremost, thanks for joining us for today's lunch. This afternoon, we're going to focus on leadership through inclusion and report on the progress made and the barriers that exist to achieving diversity within the technology sector. Our sponsors for this session are both Google and Intel, and please join me in welcoming them and thanking them for their support. Now, this is a technology discussion, right? So I want to start by asking you first to make sure to download CHCI's mobile app. It's both a great way to track all that's happening this week, keep in touch with sessions, maybe a little bit about keeping in touch with friends, and the app also allows you to connect with attendees all around you. I want to be sure to ask you, please, to set up your profile pic, make it public, and check out what else is here. And congratulations to CHCI for moving this conference into the 21st century. I'd also like to thank attendees around the country who are joining us via live stream. I want to invite your friends, family, coworkers who couldn't make it to DC today to tune in now and watch this important discussion. As you all know, they won't want to miss it. Now, when we talk about the technology sector, we're talking about not just about the trillions of dollars in investment or the mind-blowing innovation. It's not just about the iPhone 7 or the fact that every single person in this room is probably connected to the internet in the last second by doing absolutely nothing. But we're talking about literally the future of opportunity in the economy, the future of the way that we equalize opportunity for kids in schools, the future of the way that we create opportunities in business. We are literally talking about the future of opportunity for Latinos and the economy. So when we talk about technology, we are actually talking about the very center of our lives. Before we go further, though, into the discussion, I just want to take a moment, just a little break, to talk a little bit about United Healthcare. As you all know, United Healthcare has been a longtime supporter of CHCI and its leadership programs. They have a short message that they'd like to share with us today.
How can we really improve healthcare? Bring back the house call. Open walk-in clinics in convenient places. Help more moms get prenatal care. Or use technology to find insights that lower healthcare costs. Maybe help doctors spend more time with patients, not paperwork. What if you did all of this and more? Because it's all connected to better care. And better care means better health. United Health Group, built for better health.
Thank you, United Healthcare. Now, raise your hand if you're a CHCI alum. Raise your hand high. All right. All of you know that this institution has meant everything to our professional and personal development. Marriages, businesses, opportunities have come out of these halls. And it is my distinct honor as a CHCI alum to introduce the new president and CEO of CHCI, Ms. Domenika Lynch. I had the pleasure of sitting on the search committee, and we couldn't be more pleased with the outcome. She's also just her third month on the job, so please join me in welcoming Domenika Lynch.
Good afternoon, and thank you, Jason, for that wonderful introduction. Well, it is an honor to be the new CEO and president of CHCI, and I picked a fantastic week to join you. It's an amazing lineup that we have, and I'm just so pleased to be part of the new CHCI family. This technology luncheon is a perfect example of why I joined CHCI, the jobs of the future. They are in healthcare, in government, education, and technology. These are the good jobs that our community needs. We are grateful to Google and to Intel for their continued support, ensuring that Latinos have a place at the tech table. We need thousands of Latinos to start STEM careers with high-paying jobs. We need our achievements and the achievements of Latino Americans to be expected and a commonplace. We need to set high goals, and when we set them high, we need to surpass them. That's what CHCI is all about. And if you're not motivated enough to push our Latino community stronger and further than ever before, let me remind you of a certain presidential candidate of a major party who continues to make plenty ill-informed remarks about our Latino community. See, those remarks, they motivate me to work harder against intolerance and injustice that still unfortunately exists in our great country. And I hope that you are as motivated as I am to make a difference in the advancement of Latino Americans. That's why today's discussion is so important. We must put aside the distractions and get to work to prepare our Latino community today for the jobs of tomorrow. Did you know that according to the World Economic Forum, the report that came out in this January, 65% of the jobs of the future have yet to be created. 65%. Well, what does that mean? Well, if our Latino community is not prepared today, we're going to be in big trouble in the future. And get this, Latinos make up 21% of all US millennials. We have homegrown talent here, a tremendous potential in the future workforce. You see, I came from the University of Southern California, where I ran the Latino Alumni Association. And there, thank you for those Trojans out there. And there I had the opportunity to work with thousands of students that are majoring in the STEM field. So I know what it takes and I know how hard they work to continue that path, and they need our support and our investment. I've also had the privilege to work with companies like Bank of America and Univision. And I've seen what the private sector looks for in an employer, in an employee, and how we can make a difference when we come together and prioritize helping one another. I've been blessed that in my quest for the ideal job, I found my calling in helping young people to get the education that they need so that they can embark the careers of their dreams and the careers that they deserve. Indeed, it is an honor to join people like CHCI Chair, Congresswoman Linda Sánchez, and the other exemplary board members of CHCI who are committed to fighting great opportunities and good jobs for our community. So on behalf of CHCI, I say thank you to these amazing leaders. But you know, we're going to need many more allies in helping us prepare the next generation of Latino leaders for the jobs of the future. We need you as allies, because as Latinos go, so will America. The success of the Latino community is critical if America is going to remain competitive on the world stage. Latinos are going to account for 65% of the nation's population growth over the next 45 years. Our Latino population will more than double to 119 million people in the United States. And that doubling of population means that we are going to double our efforts here at CHCI. And that's why I'm here, to work harder, twice as hard as I've done before, because I know that our community is counting on us and there is tremendous amount that we can do together. We are especially grateful to partners like Hyundai because of their visionary support, investing in CHCI's Virtual Leadership Institute and helping us expand our web capabilities, helping us reach more young Latinos, because we know that if we want to connect with a millennial Latino, we have to leverage all social media opportunities. For nearly 40 years, CHCI has been instrumental in placing Latino college students in congressional internships, paid internships and paid fellowships. We know that for many of our students, these opportunities will shape the rest of their lives. And now I want to just take a second to talk to you about our theme for this year's Hispanic Heritage Month of events: Educate, Engage, and Vote. A huge part of CHCI's mission is ensuring that our young Latinos are embracing their roles as civic leaders and working to ensure that our community's voice is heard when it counts the most, and that's on Election Day. We had an amazing opening plenary this morning addressing this topic, and I just want to reinforce how critical it is for all of us to do our part in reaching out to our friends, to our families, to our abuelas, our primos, our cousins, everybody else's cousins, to make sure that together we stand and be counted this November. With that said, I look forward to an informative and lively discussion on diversity in the technology sector, but first we will take a short break for lunch. Please enjoy your meal, and we will be back shortly. Thank you.
afternoon, everyone. On behalf of Comcast, NBCU, Telemundo, I'm honored to give these remarks. My journey with CHCI is both personal and professional, having been a fellow a long, long time ago in a universe far, far away. I was supposed to come here for 9 months, and I was going to go back to the center of the universe, New York City. 20 years later, I am here, happily married with my beautiful wife and our new baby boy, and yes, I am that guy bragging about my 1-month-old. So, on a professional note, I am so honored to work for a corporation that embodies an unyielding commitment to the mission of CHCI. Comcast shares a fidelity to mission with CHCI that holds true 10 years ago, holds true today, will hold true 20 years from now. When I think about CHCI's commitment to education, I think about Comcast's commitment to digital learning and what we're doing with the Internet Essentials program, bringing internet to low-cost internet to families across the country. It's not an option, it's a tool. And I'm pleased to say that we have invested $300 million in digital literacy and connected millions of families to the internet every day. It's our signature foundation effort, and we continue with that. When I think about CHCI's commitment to empowering Latino families, I think about Telemundo's Power Within initiative on financial literacy, health, education, everything that will help empower the Latino community. We are at this amazing point where we get to define who we are as a people at that next level. As Domenika mentioned in her remarks, it really is a critical moment in time, and Telemundo is doing everything it can to help empower, fuel, energize the Latino community through its many, many platforms. When I think about CHCI's commitment to diversity, and it's going to be a critical panel that we're going to hear about, when you think about technology, you need to think broadly about it. You think about diversity, you think broadly about it, because these facets touch every aspect of the human experience. At Comcast NBC, we have this, I consider, it's almost this unprecedented external joint diversity committee where we bring in national leaders from La Raza, LULAC, and across the platforms. It is a huge body of national leaders that come in and help us to be better. Some of these conversations are not always easy, but they're critical. And as a result, we are a better company for it. When I think about the Rooney Rule and I think about digital inclusion, the governance, our people, again, these are all critical issues, and I'm hoping the panel will hit hard on these issues and have a good, robust conversations. Because as we discuss tech diversity, I'm proud to say Comcast, as a technology leader that makes internet and Wi-Fi possible, we are in the game of diversity and proud of it. In closing, I want to say thanks to the fellows, and I hope for those young folks that are here experiencing, especially for the first time, that you remain committed to the missions of CHCI and also remain committed to each other. I think about my friends that are more like family these days of 20 years ago, and everything that I've learned from them and continue to learn, and how they support you, good times, bad, ugly. So enjoy it, soak it in, and have a fidelity to each other. So with that, I have the distinct honor of introducing my friend, Representative Linda Sánchez. Our chairwoman will kick off this session, and we're honored to be with her. Her leadership in CHCI CHC is most impressive. She's a passionate leader that affects positive change. Being on the executive committee, I've seen it. There is no one with less passion than Linda Sánchez. She is going to continue to work to help make the conditions of Latinos and all Americans, frankly, better, and working for a more diverse, and working to promote more diverse workforces. Please join me in introducing Linda Sánchez to the floor. She is my friend, and we are ready for her, and also not a bad little dancer.
thank you, Juan, for that lovely introduction. You know, he introduced me at the luncheon last year, and I finally figured out why they asked Juan to keep introducing me. He's the only person that they could find to say something nice about me. I'm teasing, I love him. Good afternoon, I'm glad to be here with you all for this very important conversation that we're going to launch on diversity and Latino inclusion in the technology sector. You know, the term diversity is very in vogue these days. It seems to be a very hot topic here in Washington, D.C. and around the country. And in fact, if CHCI members did a tweet storm every time they talked about diversity and inclusion, it would definitely be a topic that was trending. And that's because diversity really matters to the members of the Congressional Caucus. Not to fill quotas, but to fill classrooms and boardrooms with new ideas, innovative ideas. In an industry where it seems like there's a new phone model that comes out every month, I'm sure that new ideas and new blood could flourish. Technology is an exciting space, and it's literally transforming the way that we live our everyday lives. I want you to think about this. Over the last decade, we've drastically changed the way that we shop, the way that we drive, and the way that we connect with other people, and even the way that we date. Those of you on Tinder know that's true. In fact, while sitting in this room, I'd be shocked if there was somebody who hadn't looked at their phone at least 10 times since the luncheon began. At your fingertips, you have access to your friends' wedding pictures and even the latest breaking news. However, for all the progress made in the tech space, it seems like the workforce is stuck back in the ages of the first Microsoft Word. On average, Latinos make up just 7.4% of Silicon Valley high-tech workforce, and African Americans make up just 8% of that same workforce. In the top ranks of tech firms, the lack of diversity is even greater, with 83% of employees being white. These low numbers mean that Silicon Valley industry leaders are missing out on a diverse, talented group of individuals in their tech and their non-tech workforce. But the reality is that they can't afford to exclude Latinos, or any minorities for that matter. If we hope to remain the leading economic power of the world, then we can't exclude one of the fastest growing populations in our country from this important industry. It's imperative for the future strength of our country to confront and address this disparity right now. In fact, this should have been done a long time ago, long before now, but we certainly can't afford to wait another day. We must continue to push this industry to look beyond the same small pools of talent that they go to over and over again. And I have nothing against Stanford or Caltech or MIT, but we should be working to make sure that those programs are also expanding their recruiting efforts, or forever diversity will remain low. But that talent pool exists in other places as well. Of the top 25 universities that graduate students with STEM degrees, 6 of those are located in California, and 2 of them are Hispanic serving institutions. And yet, probably recruitment efforts are not focused in those areas where we know there is a talent pool. If the employees at these companies look more like their consumer base, from the sales floor up to the executive suites, then I'm sure they're going to be better situated for new business opportunities for all of our communities. As I frequently tell folks in every sector, I would like you to diversify your workforce because it's the right thing to do. But if you think about the future of your company, it's the smart thing to do because we are the consumers of the future. Latinos are one of the biggest users of smartphones and tablets, and with a purchasing power of $1.5 trillion, tech companies have definitely benefited from our community. The lack of diverse talent in the technology industry is ongoing, and it's one that CHCI and CHC members are taking the lead to try to help address. I'll be honest with you, while the needle has moved, it's been nearly imperceptible. It hasn't moved far enough on this. So I look forward to today's discussion into how we can create a strategy for accelerating diversity and inclusion in the high-tech sector, because it's long overdue. And from the insight and input that's garnered from these events, CHCI is going to issue a white paper outlining the path forward for tech and the Latino community. Because we don't expect people to magically solve the problem. We want to be a partner in helping them to solve that problem. So joining us today is a panel of experts who will share and discuss more ways in which we can get at the heart of this issue and begin to address it. CHCI is committed to working with them and working with all of you so that we can take a lead on workforce diversity in the tech sector. Thank you so much for your participation in today's luncheon, and hopefully we'll have a good, robust discussion. Thank you and God bless.
Welcome, everyone. So first I want to just say congratulations for whoever chose the music for this luncheon. I think it's some of the best I've heard at a CHCI a CHCI event. And also thank you to Representative Sánchez for her insightful comments. I think that framing the conversation around the future of the community is exactly what this conversation is all about. And as you've seen, we've been joined on stage by our panelists for today's discussion. I'm very, very honored to moderate this conversation, so thank you all for being with us. And so before we begin, let me just tell you who's up here to talk about this issue with us. To my right, your left, is Daisy Auger-Dominguez. She is Global Head of Diversity Staffing at Google, where she's responsible for the strategic direction, implementation, and alignment of Google's global diversity hiring. Daisy's career spans 20 years of experience in frontline business, corporate social responsibility, human resources, and leadership roles across finance, media, and technology. She's also a passionate supporter for building cultures where everyone has access and opportunity to realize their full potential. Emilio Gonzalez is the Executive Director for Strategic Alliances at Verizon, where he manages external affairs and a wide range of public policy issues. Prior to joining Verizon, Emilio was an appointee in the Clinton administration and served as Senior Policy Analyst at the U.S. Congress Office of Technology Assessment. Carmela Castellano-Garcia serves as the President of the Board of Trustees of the Castellano Family Foundation, which has donated more than $4 million in grants to Santa Clara County nonprofits in California and is actively involved in addressing the diversity issue in Silicon Valley. Carmela is also the President and Chief Executive Officer of the California Primary Care Association, overseeing a membership association of more than 1,100 nonprofit, community clinics, and health centers, which serve more than 5.6 million patients a year. Imelda Castro is a director in Intel Corporation's Technology and Manufacturing Group in the Global Supply Chain Management Org. Imelda's career spans over 30 years in high-tech leadership roles in technology training, quality and reliability, procurement, capacity, and supply chain management to support Intel's worldwide factories. Castro is a passionate leader for women and Latino advancement initiatives, including chair of Intel's Hispanic Leadership Council that just receives Intel's 2016 Global Diversity and Inclusion Achievement Award. Please welcome our panelists. So let's get started. Today we're going to discuss the progress and the efforts the technology industry is taking to increase its diverse talent base. And so I want to pose the first question to you, Daisy. One of the areas of focus that came out of CHCI Tech Summit and the 2015 CHCI public policy discussions was a need to invest in training resources to mitigate bias in recruiting, hiring, and employment. Daisy, Google has a training program specifically to address unconscious bias. Can you tell us a little bit about that and why Google has committed to that training?
Sure thing. Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me here today. Tackling unconscious bias is just one of the many areas that Google is trying to become a much more diverse and inclusive company. But it is absolutely essential in helping us meet our promise of building technology that helps make life easier for as many people as possible. So here's what we know about unconscious bias. It exists. We are inundated every day with over 11 million bits of information, and we can only process about 40 of them consciously. What's challenging about unconscious bias is that we don't know it exists, so we don't know it's wrong. We do it every single day. But we also know from research that even just raising awareness about unconscious bias helps us make more conscious decisions on a going forward basis. And so a few years ago, we launched a global multifaceted unconscious bias program, and as we call it, unbiasing program. And it began with a workshop that was led for Googlers to understand unconscious bias and how it shows up in the workplace and its negative implications. And so we began with science. We then followed that up in 2014 with a lab, a scenario-based lab called Bias Busting at Work. And these are learning programs where Googlers actually experience and discuss unconscious bias within the context of the workplace and how they can address the negative implications of unconscious bias. And then the third piece of our program that we ran about a year or so ago is that we've integrated unconscious bias into our new hire orientation training. So every new Googler, Noogler as we call them, that joins the organization now goes through a learning component as part of the new hire orientation where they understand the implications of unconscious bias and why it's important at Google. And ever since we launched that, we've had over 25,000 Nooglers go through the program. And over the years, we've had over 70,000 Googlers worldwide go through, and including 80% of our hiring managers, go through at least one, if not all three, of those learning programs. But what we also know is that it doesn't just end with the learning component of it. So we also look at unconscious bias within the structures and processes of our organization. And so we address that, and we have teams that are constantly addressing, investigating, examining how unconscious bias can impact decision-making in the workplace and where we can mitigate that at certain points of the program. And so in addition to that, we also have Googlers who are constantly looking at it within different contexts, the context of education, the context of media, and we partner with different programs and companies and organizations to help amplify this work. What we found is over the years that this work is permeating everything that we not just speak about, but the way that we look at workplace structures of how we hire, how we promote, who even gets to speak at a meeting. And we've added all of that. If anyone is interested, you can go to our website, WeWork. It's wework.withgoogle.com. And that's our platform where we share all of our HR best practices, and we also share best practices of other companies that are also trying to make work better for everyone.
Great. So, Emilio, let's turn to you. Verizon is recognized for diversity and inclusion. Tell us how you got there, the processes, and how others can do the same as well.
Sure. Well, first of all, a side note, I was getting ready to come up here, and there are all these signs back there that say, please turn off your cell phone. And I just want to say it's cool to leave them on. I love the sound of those things. So, you know, I think at a high level, I would say, you know, everyone can do better at diversity and inclusion. There is no perfect, optimal point. But I think what's worked for us, and we've had a lot of years of experience on this, is a couple of things. I can tell you it doesn't happen by accident, it happens by design. What I mean by that is you have to have people at the highest levels of the company who are deeply committed to diversity and inclusion. It's not just the right thing to do, it's not just a work pipeline issue, but we want to reflect and connect with the markets we serve. And we know where the growth is, and it is predominantly in minority markets. Secondly, you got to have a commitment to transparency. By that I mean we publish our numbers. So we publish not only our employment numbers, but how much we spend every year with women and diverse suppliers, how much we spend philanthropically, how much we spend giving to political parties and other things. Once you start to have transparency, then you have accountability, and then you're out there and you really start to look at this. I also think that the leadership of the company and our board is comprised of 13 independent directors. I think 5 or 6 of them are women and minorities. And the last time we needed to hatch somebody from the high-tech sector, we went out to Silicon Valley and added an African-American woman. And we will continue to do that. It's part of a process. So I would tell you you have to have a holistic vision for diversity and inclusion. It's about women, minorities, LGBT, disability, veterans, the whole collage we call inclusion. I'll stop there.
Sure. So, Carmela, one of the goals of the Castellanos Families Foundation is also to do with education. Is it to enable Latino youth and youth of color to achieve their education goals? And if so, share with us some of the successes you have helped in achieving that goal, and how do you feel it can lead to increasing diversity within the tech industry?
Thank you. Well, the Castellano Family Foundation is located in the heart of Silicon Valley in San Jose, California, and provides funding to nonprofit organizations that serve the Latino community. We have long recognized, being raised in San Jose, of course, recognized that the school systems are really failing our Latino youth, and they are not advancing in the STEM arena at the level that we really need to happen. Just a discouraging statistic from 2010 showed that in San Jose and Silicon Valley, Latinos were below proficient in Algebra 1 at a rate of 70%, and that compared to 45% of the general population. So clearly there is a need to focus on our Latino youth right in the backyard of the tech industry and invest greater resources in their educational attainment. So one of the focuses of the Castellano Family Foundation is to invest in nonprofit organizations in Silicon Valley that are really attempting to do this, to be in the schools, to work with the children, organizations that are community-based, that have community boards that are reflective of the community. And just to give you a few examples of the kind of programs that we really think are important for our Latino youth include, for example, the Jose Valdez Math Institute. This is a wonderful program that brings hundreds of students from San Jose into intensive 7-week-long summer courses where they focus on math to really help them to prepare to be more successful when they start the next school year. The programs take place in community colleges and on college campuses to expose them. Other programs such as the MESA program at San Jose State University is very important for helping students to explore careers in science, math, and technology, and provide them with tutoring and mentoring opportunities, which are, of course, also very important for supporting our youth. And then there's programs right in the elementary schools that are providing, for example, hands-on science. This is beyond what they are learning in the general curriculum. There are after-school programs where the students can stay after school and be involved in science competitions, science fairs, science projects, again, to expose them to science and work to enhance their math skills. All these kinds of efforts, we believe, are absolutely critical. But there is certainly a need for a much more significant investment in our Latino community, and starting right there in the backyard of Silicon Valley. You have a population in San Jose that is 30% Latino and growing. And yet, we are not represented, you heard the statistics from the Congresswoman, not represented in the tech sector. And that is a huge challenge for not only San Jose, but the entire state and our country. So we really think in terms of the success of the foundation, what we just hope to continue to do is support local nonprofits that are involved in these kind of very important programming. But what we need to do is encourage an even greater investment from others. And it's going to take philanthropy for one, but well beyond philanthropy, the tech sector, some of the initiatives we're hearing about today where they are investing in the community are certainly absolutely important. We need to do more with our schools, local businesses. It's really going to take the entire community coming together to really make a dent and address this issue.
Now, in 2015, Intel announced at the Consumer Electronics Show an ambitious goal to be the first high-tech company to reach full representation of women and underrepresented minorities in your U.S. workforce by 2020, and also committed $300 million to support this goal to accelerate diversity and inclusion, not just at Intel, but across the technology industry. You're 18 months into this commitment. Could you share with us a little bit about some of the successes Intel has had and learnings to propel all of us toward this goal?
Great, thank you. It's interesting sitting on the panel here that there are some similarities between us. So let me tell you a little bit about Intel. So Intel, we're known as inventors, we're known as problem solvers, and we're also known as setting impossible goals and reaching them. And that is exactly how we are approaching our challenge of reaching our full representation. We believe that that is critical to meet our business goals going forward. Our CEO, Brian Krzanich, is a strong believer of setting, we call audacious goals, and that's what he did at the Consumer Electronics Show. And part of what we believe at Intel is when you set goals, you hold individuals accountable to meeting those goals and you measure them, and that's what we're doing. So in terms of the $300 million, what Intel is doing is we are really expanding beyond the traditional staffing, advancement, retention, and we really are looking at the entire ecosystem in our technology area, from increasing our diversity spending, working with our pipeline institutes like what was just mentioned here. And then we're also looking at very innovative programs in our tech industry. We have a tech harassment initiative going. Recently this summer we did a Stop the Violence, so many of those types of initiatives. In the last 18 months, we've made quite a bit of progress. We're not there yet. But starting with our, just our staffing level, when we started this journey at the end of 2014, our diverse hiring was about 31%. So where we're at right now, as of the end of June, we're up to 45%. And this is our URM and our women hiring. If you look at just the Hispanic population, back in 2014, we were at a little bit over 5%, and we're about 8.7% hiring now. So a huge dent in that space. We're also making progress in our middle management, our senior management, and our executive level management. And similar to Verizon, we now have 2 women who are on our board of directors. That's one area. The second area is where we are working with our broader tech ecosystem. And for example, we're working with our high schools across the nation to really influence the curriculum. We're funding scholarships. We've got teachers who are coming into our manufacturing environment and just getting immersed in the culture. We're also investing in Carmela, you just mentioned the Silicon Valley. So we just invested in the Silicon Valley Hispanic Foundation last year. We've also got investments in the Oakland Unified School System, and where we actually have students and interns coming in over the summer, paid internship positions. The third area where we've made progress is in our diversity spending. So we have a goal by 2020 to spend $1 billion in URM and women-owned businesses. And so far, this year we have a goal of I think it's 100 million, and 400 million, and we are actually on track to achieve that. So some of the learnings for Intel have been, number one, you've got to be committed from the top level, your board, your executives, all the way down. The second one is you've got to be able to tie our diversity and inclusion directly to our bottom line results. We've also learned that it's not just about diversity. You've got to include the inclusion piece of it in there. So diversity is about almost like being invited to the dance. But inclusion is about being asked to dance. We also, a learning very recent is that we have found that we are very engaged. We have a Hispanic Leadership Council as an example, a Black Leadership Council, a Women's Council. And what we have found is that that is necessary to get our senior levels engaged, but we can't do it all. It is critical that we have to engage our majority Asian and white male population and get them involved in sponsorship and mentorship. So those are some of the learnings that we've had in Intel.
So both invited to the party and asked to dance.
Absolutely.
I really appreciate that example. So for the audience, Everyone up here knows what I'm about to share with you, but I want to bring you all into the reason why this conversation is so important with sharing just a couple of numbers. So diversity numbers in leadership roles within the tech sector, of course, very low. I think we all know that. According to Diversity Inc., the average levels of diverse senior leadership at companies in Silicon Valley are lower than for companies included in Diversity Inc.'s scientific index. That's at 2.8% versus 5%. Further, an analysis by the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission found that while Latinos made up approximately 5% of management level positions in the high-tech industry and just over 3% of executive leadership, they made up just over 3% of executive leadership compared to 83% for white executives in Silicon Valley. It's important to note that these numbers are not only low in the tech sector, but they're also low across corporate America. In fact, as of 2015, less than 2% of Fortune 500 CEOs are Latino overall. So for all of our panelists, we start talking about about the solutions to this. What are your organizations specifically doing to increase the diversity numbers in leadership positions within your companies and communities?
Sure. I guess I'll try and start. Let me set a baseline for you because you've heard a lot of numbers and figures. At Verizon, 40% of our 180,000 employees are minorities. 37% of our workforce are women, and we spend, in the last 5 years, $25 billion with women and minority-owned suppliers. What we've learned in the process of getting to those numbers is you got to meet people where they are. By that I mean, when we recruit, yeah, we go to Stanford, we go to MIT, we go to Harvard. We also go to Hispanic serving institutions in New Mexico and Texas. They're all over. When we look to hire and promote, the point Daisy brought up about unconscious biases, everybody in the company who has hiring authority has to go through this training. And I have to tell you, I thought I knew the ins and outs of this. It was an eye-opener for me. It's a great training. I hope every company does it. Thirdly, you gotta get past some of the stereotypes that are in people's heads. And to do that, you have to take risk and innovate. And what I mean specifically by that is 2 years ago, we started an app challenge. We asked schools around the country to identify a problem in their school or their community and come up with an idea of how an app could help them solve it. So I want to tell you what you know the stereotypes are. Women don't code, Latino women don't code, and certainly poor Latino women don't code. Well, the national champion who ultimately won the prize and was sent to MIT for a week to learn to code, and then went to the White House for the fair with the president, were a bunch of young girls from Renseca High School on the border with Texas and Mexico. All Latina, all poor, and today that app was purchased by a venture capital firm because what they did was rather phenomenal. For us, that was a real eye-opener. Talent resides just about everywhere.
Well, certainly being involved in philanthropy and healthcare and this issue of tech, the issue is prevalent. And I just need to mention, since we are talking about STEM and the kind of careers that lead to the tech industry, it's having an impact on other sectors that are economic engines for the state of California and nationally, and provide jobs that are well-paying and wonderful career paths, and that is the area of healthcare, for example. And so you have the state of California where you have 5% of our physicians being Latino, but 39% of the population being Latino. So tremendous disparities, and that's not just for physicians, it's nurses and all across the clinician spectrum. So this is the fact that we are struggling in the sciences, math, and technology, and the education arena has an impact not only in tech, but in other very important sectors. Philanthropy is another very eye-opening arena, despite philanthropy's commitment to advancing these issues and investing in causes for the poor and underserved. Ultimately, if you look at diversity in philanthropy, it is tremendously lacking. And there was an initiative in the California legislature to actually hold philanthropy accountable to reporting on their diversity stats, which the foundations did oppose and ultimately entered into a voluntary effort to track diversity. And the results just came out several months ago after 5 years of voluntarily tracking diversity in the philanthropic sector by over 400 foundations throughout the country. What they found was that there was pretty much no improvement in increasing diversity in philanthropy at all levels. So these issues are really challenging across all sectors and really having a big impact on our community. In terms of ultimately really trying to address this, I think it's really important for people like the individuals in this room. We all have a role to play. You are here and have made it to this conference because you have achieved a certain level of education in your life. You are involved in the public policy arena, attending a policy conference. Certainly policy is a very important arena where these issues need to be addressed. And so I think it's really on all of us who are in a position of influence, in a position being educated, in a position to be interacting with others who care about this issue, to really start by asking, what can we do to impact this? And it can start with your children at home and what we tell our girls about their opportunities and how we encourage them to realize that there are opportunities for them out there. It involves with your familia and educating others, and then it's really what you do with your career. We have these young interns in this room from the Congressional Hispanic Caucus Institute, interns in public policy. There is tremendous opportunity to impact these issues by being involved in the halls of Washington or the capitals in your state. And we really need Latino leadership in those positions to make a difference. And even just as the CEO of a trade association in Sacramento, I look around, and not only are there no other Latina CEOs of trade associations in the healthcare sector in California, but I don't know of other Latina CEOs in the trade associations of the halls of Sacramento that I'm aware of. So this is a real issue throughout. And I think those of us who are in a position really need to start by asking, what can we do? And I think there is a lot more that needs to be done.
To answer your question around leadership, and similar to my colleagues here, we look at this from a 360 approach. And so a lot of the work that we do, we have an entire K-12 portfolio that is driven towards addressing some of the systemic failures that you've been speaking about. We have a CS First program that works with teachers across the country to help equip them, many of them who have not received that kind of training in the past, to better teach and prepare their students in the computer science field. We also holistically engage with communities across the country, again, to help reinforce and reimagine what working in a company in Silicon Valley in the technology sector can be, and really to give a sense that you can not only work at Google, but you can be Google. And that's part of the cultural work that we're driving across the organization. From an undergraduate perspective, we have a host of programs, and absolutely agree with you. We know the schools that traditionally have yielded the traditional talent that we have in organizations. And a couple of years ago, we looked at the schools that we went to, and we realized that we needed to expand our purview and reach organizations with much larger underrepresented communities. And what we found is that we've tripled the number of schools that we go to now. And as a result of that, we've significantly increased, and over 20% of our new grad hiring increased by, for minority, not just Latino, African American, and female populations in the organization. We just had to look broader. We had to really think systematically about what were the reasons why we were getting the same results over and over again. We changed those, we created better solutions, and we're now seeing that upward trend in terms of growing our new grad hiring population. But it's not just about the entry-level talent and the new grad population. We also have to look at the leadership in the organizations, which was your original question. You can't be what you can't see. And we focus very heavily on ensuring that we're not only developing the talent in the organization, we're not just bringing them in, we're making sure that they're thriving when they're there. We're creating targeted development programs for our Latino and African American employees in the organization, as well as female employees. And we've also very recently, because we are a tech company and we look at building solutions that are both tactical, technical, and also adaptive. We recently, from a hiring perspective for our leadership team, hired someone that's going to be focused precisely on hiring senior level executive talent into the organization. I was hired a year ago to help amplify our hiring efforts, but we all knew, similar to your point, that it's not just about bringing the talent in the organization. We have to make sure that we build inclusive cultures for everyone to thrive at every level and for folks to see opportunity for each other as they're moving up the ranks of the organization. And that's part of the work that we're doing both internally and externally with communities. And similar to Intel, we also engage very heavily with communities from a business perspective in terms of building businesses, in terms of providing tools for local businesses to thrive and grow so that they can be part of the larger economic machine that we speak of, but also because that creates greater opportunity and access. And those parents can educate their kids and create opportunity for them to join companies like ours. So we're also looking at this as all of my peers are here from a 360 perspective that allows folks who have never seen themselves, and I hope that all of you have, with an opportunity to work in the technology space, as seeing companies like ours as real opportunities and preparing yourselves as well to be able to become the talent that we hire. I have to say this because this is one of our success stories that actually leans into our work with HSIs. Several years ago, we found that we weren't hiring talent from historically black colleges and universities. And what we found was not that the talent wasn't there, was that the learning curriculum wasn't preparing those students to be well equipped to come to organizations like ours. And so what we did was that we decided to attack the system from the inside out. And we went to these schools, we installed Googlers in residence to teach the Intro to Computer Science program. And we've now expanded that program to 10 historically black colleges and universities and continue to expand that. But we found that this model doesn't just work in historically black colleges, it can also work in HSIs. And so we're looking at content development in all of these universities, again, to better prepare and equip the amazing talent that's out there.
Let me start with, at Intel, with just our statistics on what our senior leadership looks like. So when you look at our mid-management, we're about 9.3%, which is about 1% higher than it was a year ago. Our senior leadership is running about 6%, 1% over. And in particular, our executive levels, so these are our vice presidents, our fellows, and up. We're at 7%, which is 2% over where we were a year ago. And part of what is enabling this is we have a number of development programs within Intel that support that leadership program. In particular, we have this blueprint program that focuses on our mid-level managers, and it takes them through an immersive 10-month program. It's designed for our Hispanic, African American, and Native American employees. We also have leadership councils, which is something that we were talking about earlier that has worked really well for Intel. So I'm the chair of our Hispanic Leadership Council, and it's made up of our executive Hispanic members. And what we're doing is we're actively engaged in not just mentoring, but actually sponsoring our next generation Hispanics. So, part of the difference between mentoring and sponsorship is to really advance your career, you need individuals who are speaking on your behalf. You need sponsors. You need individuals who are speaking on your behalf when those decisions are being made. So that's one thing that we're very proud of that we think has really helped to increase our leadership presence.
Absolutely. So, and again, to bring the more numbers to an audience right after lunch, I know is very dangerous, but if you'll follow me on this. The White House Initiative on Educational Excellence for Hispanics reports that currently 1 in 5 women in the United States is Hispanic. By 2060, nearly 1 in 3 women in the United States will be Hispanic or Latina. Yet in 2015, only 1% of the jobs in the computing workforce were occupied by Latinas, and Hispanic women received only 2% of doctoral degrees in computer and information sciences in 2014. A recent report by the National Center for Women in Information Technology states that, quote, Latinas represent a vastly untapped talent pool, and the current representation of Latina girls and women in tech is dismal, both in the workforce and in education. Imelda, I'd like to ask you for a little bit to talk specifically, and of course for our other panelists to join in, tell us about the challenges we face, particularly in developing Latinas for the technology workforce, and share a little bit some of the ways that Intel and of course all your companies as well are trying to face the challenge.
Yeah, I think at a high level, when you look at Latinas, you know, whether it starts at elementary school or junior high and certainly up to high school, they're not always interested in a technology field. They're not inspired, and if they are, they're not prepared for a high-tech career. So what Intel has been doing is we really have aimed at kind of two prongs. The first is working with our educational partners. So, you know, part of this includes what I mentioned earlier. We actually have invested about $27 million since 2015 in working with universities, working with foundations to actually create opportunities, like I said earlier, for teachers to come into Intel to really understand what technology is all about. We fund scholarships for our underrepresented population. We work with colleges, we work with the high schools on putting together a curriculum. That's kind of one prong. The second prong is we really work with our passionate employees at Intel to get them involved in the school systems. So, and a part of this, I'm going to give you just two examples of what we do. In particular, for our Hispanic population, we are very active in our Latino ERG group, and what the women have done is they have put together something called an Hermanas Conference. And we now have it at about 6 of our US states, where they actually come in to the junior high and high schools, and they host a one-day conference for them. And part of what they're doing is they're actually simulating and they're teaching them about what it's like to be involved in a technology company. That's one example of what we do. Another example is just to get people excited about software. We're very involved in Girls Who Code. So the women's initiative, in fact, I've got a software engineer in my organization that spends about 2 afternoons a month working with our local high school in those types of initiatives.
I'd love to hear other examples.
So two thoughts on this, and I'm going to go a little bit counterintuitive. But I can assure you, as a parent, as a husband, and as a son, I have seen and understand the power of Latino women up close, and it is fantastic. Yeah, but look, if you're out there and you're young and you're listening to this conversation and you're saying to yourself, if I'm not in STEM, I'm doomed, don't worry. The greatest technologist we've ever seen, the person who reinvented the phone, music, books, the whole thing, his name was Steve Jobs, wasn't a technologist. He actually was into design. So the point I want to make is we shouldn't forget, we should keep in mind that not everyone's going to have the deep aptitude for science and math. Companies like Verizon are going to hire attorneys, marketing people, HR people, salespeople. So the key point here is that the tech future has got a very big platform to offer the pipeline of the next generation, which is you. And STEM is a big part of it, I assure you. But don't despair. There's going to be ample opportunity in plenty of places.
I'm so glad that you mentioned that because many of our companies, and like Intel, Google has been addressing the acute problem with STEM and increasing that access and opportunity. And interestingly, when you noted that, Imelda, I have an 8-year-old daughter who yesterday took her first Intro to Python class, and I call that the privilege of living in the Bay Area. And when I called her last night to ask her how it went, she said, "Oh, it was easy, Mom. These are the things I've been doing for the last couple of months." The fact of the matter is that our young communities and populations don't always have the access, or when they do, they have the interest and they have the aptitude. But we do have to create opportunities to make sure that the training that they're receiving, the access that they're receiving is equitable. And this is an issue of equity. And I think that's what a lot of our companies are trying to deliver in organizations like yours as well. But in addition to that, I think to your point, it is also understanding the broader ecosystem of the technology world and knowing that we just don't hire software engineers. Actually, one of the diversity recruiters on my team recently published an article on Fast Company where he said that we actually, you don't have to study CS to get a degree in computer science, to get a job in computer science. We've actually recently hired someone that had a literature degree, and she just started coding later in her career and became one of our software engineers in the company. And so, really fundamentally, at the end of the day, is creating opportunities and access to an industry that is disrupting everything that we do, that is shifting dramatically who we are as a nation and as a world. And you want to be at the forefront of that, and you have tremendous opportunities to do that within our companies.
So what I hear is awareness, opportunity, access and equity, and mentorship. Did you want to add?
Well, I'm so glad you mentioned Latinas in particular, because I think it is so important to support our young girls to understand that this is an option and a track potentially for them. And at the Castellano Family Foundation, we really recognize the importance of investing in young women as well. And organizations, we talk about the power of Latinas, there's a wonderful organization in the Bay Area called the Chicana Latina Foundation, which really focuses on empowering women in their educational achievement, everything from providing scholarships, which is so key to helping young ladies get through school, to mentoring, so exposing them to women in the profession who could support them. They're developing an internship program right now, and they are looking to Silicon Valley tech companies to partner with to be able to place Latinas in these firms with a paid internship opportunity so that they can get the exposure. And then certainly leadership development, which is so important for young Latinas to be able to be exposed to others, to be able to come together to support one another. Organizations like the Latina Coalition of Silicon Valley, which is about professional women who are in the industry and government and other sectors really coming together to support one another. So I think that focusing on young women in our Latino community is absolutely essential.
And it's interesting that both of you mentioned mentorship, right? I would imagine that everyone in the room has a mentor in their lives or many mentors. People have opened doors or created opportunity or opened our eyes to things that we didn't know existed. I'd love to hear a couple of examples of that here from the panel, both of the two of you that mentioned it, of course, everyone else as well. Especially in this space in terms of either in your careers and entering your companies or in kind of being the creators or at the vanguard of this conversation.
Well, back to the powers of Latinas supporting Latinas. And I have talked to so many Latinas who say that their key mentor has been another Latina. And I think, again, it goes to what we can do in this room. Those of us in professional careers who have our degrees and women supporting others. And I know I have been mentored by many, including my mother, Carmen Castellano, who's always been my role model and certainly my mentor, but other individuals such as Jane Garcia in the health sector, who is the executive director of La Clínica de la Raza, and I represent the community health centers in California, someone who's just been there by my side, counseled me throughout my career, someone I could really count on who believes in me. Those things make an absolute difference for our empowerment as women. And those of us who have had the benefit of having a mentor support us along to be able to turn around and give that to somebody else, I think it's really one of the most important things we can do. And you can do it one-on-one by taking someone under your wing and supporting them, advising them, and counseling in their career. And then you can also do it by being visible and being out there and being in a leadership position and being in a public forum and encouraging broader groups of young women to get involved in tech sector, advance their education, and advance their employment. Mentoring is absolutely key.
Quick thought on this. You know, this conversation about diversity and inclusion should not be a conversation about subtraction and division. It should really be about multiplication and addition. And what I mean exactly by that is, as you can tell, I'm not a millennial, I'm a little older. But I've been here 25 years, and I've had great opportunities in this city. Those opportunities, those doors were opened to me predominantly by non-minorities. And to this day, I get a lot of help. And now I try to give it back, particularly where I see great need, which is in our community. But we got to find a way to make this conversation truly inclusive, or we end up in a place of division and subtraction. To
your point, thank you so much. To your point around mentoring, mentoring happens at every stage and level of our careers. And so when I think about the HOLA, the Latino ERG at Google, they recently, I think this was their second time supporting a coding camp with the Hispanic Heritage Foundation, where our Googlers are mentoring and coaching the future generation that's going to help shift this industry. And I think about that at that entry level. I think about my role as the new executive sponsor of the Latino ERG at Google. It's my responsibility to help mentor and coach and support the Latinos who are looking above and trying to see themselves represented. But it's also, to your point, our responsibility to make sure that the burden doesn't just rest on us. That it is a shared burden across the organization. And a lot of the work that we're doing, and really is through the passion of Googlers alike, because similar to my colleagues here, I sit on the shoulders of giants, Latinas and non-Latinos. And I actually, one of my mentors is here. I don't know if I see him right now, but Victor Arias is here, who is one of my mentors who happens to be Latino. But we were introduced by a non-Latina at Moody's when I worked there years ago, who identified us as an opportunity to build a relationship and help support each other. So I think that mentoring is key. Sponsorship, absolutely. And tons of research indicates that women in particular and underrepresented minorities are over-mentored and under-sponsored. So I don't want to diminish the value of mentoring, but also want to think about it from a strategic standpoint. It's great. I have lots of mentors, but who's sitting at the table advocating for me when a promotion is being discussed, when a new role is being created, and someone's going to tap someone on the shoulder and say, this is the person you should be thinking about. It may not look ready just yet, but I'm going to vouch for them. And I'm going to make sure that they succeed in that role. And that is one of the critical pieces that we rarely speak about and that many of our organizations are starting to create more formality around.
Yeah. Absolutely. So it's interesting, similar to Emilio, I have had mentors throughout my career, and most of them have not been URMs or females. What's interesting is I was at Intel probably about 10 years when I worked for the first Intel factory manager, and that was a female factory manager, and that was unheard of. And she brought all of the women together, and she created this Women of Color network. It was before we had ERGs. And that was the first time that somebody at that level reinforced to me the value and the responsibility that we all had to give back and pay it forward. So I've been engaged since that very time, and for me, it's, I'm the sponsor of our women's initiative in the Arizona site, and a large part of what we do in there is mentoring. And mentoring can come through one-on-one, it can come through being involved in a forum like this and learning from somebody. We recently started adopting the Sheryl Sandberg Lean-In Circles, and in the last year, I've been mentoring a group of 8 Latina women. And at the end of we met probably about 6 times, and at the end of it, we all shared, what did we get out of this mentoring circle? And what was interesting to me is 3 of the women had found different jobs from the time that they started, and one individual who thought she was going to leave Intel was actually thriving in her career, and she really attributed it all to that mentoring circle. So if you're not engaged in something, whether it's a one-on-one or a formal mentoring program, I would definitely recommend that you reach out and see what's going on within your community or within your company.
Sure. I spent a lot of time, obviously, as a CHCI alum and at Rutgers, and I always say mentorship does not need a contract, right? If I find someone that I want, whose knowledge I want, and mentorship is coffee, it is good questions, it's just quality time, right? You can decide you are going to mentor me, even if you won't sign the agreement. So I'd like to invite our audience to participate in the discussion as well. I think we have 2 mics going around, and we welcome questions. Let's see a couple of hands up. I see a couple of excited hands up.
Yes.
Share with us your name and organization.
Yes. Hi there. Good afternoon. My name is Norma Fernandez, and I work for Everyone On. We're a national nonprofit that tackles the digital divide. So I was super excited to hear this panel and the tech companies address this issue, including diversity. First, thank you so much for being here and sharing all the wonderful strides that you're doing. And second, I want to say that it's really refreshing and exciting to see 3 women as panelists talking on this issue. As you know, oftentimes this issue is tackled by men, older white men in particular, so I really appreciate this. So my question is, you all are doing amazing work, it sounds like, in your respective organizations, and it's a huge national issue, trickles down to the local level. How are you, if at all, collaborating amongst the tech companies and foundations to really tackle this issue and to also really accelerate the efforts that you've already undertaken?
The issue being the divide issue?
Just how we're collaborating.
Sorry, the diversity issue. So how are you collaborating, in particular the tech companies, with each other to address the issue?
Yeah. How do you all collaborate to kind of combine efforts in some way or maximize your efforts?
Actually, I will start with the question that was asked of Intel. So in 2015, I think many of you are familiar with the Consumer Electronics Show. It's the biggest stage out there for high-tech companies, and it was in 2015 that Brian Krzanich announced our commitment to reach full representation by 2020, and he consciously did that to create a sense of collaboration with the other tech companies, because I think everybody's aware that not everybody publishes their information. Some may do it internally, some, like Intel and Google, also publish internally and externally. And I think that was the most public way of Intel really wanting to collaborate with our tech companies. And as a result of that, we've got a number of initiatives just from a global diversity and inclusion perspective, where we are reaching out to other companies to benchmark what they're doing, learn from them, and also kind of give back. Daisy and I were chatting earlier about her engagement with our former Global Diversity and Inclusion Director and what she has learned from Intel and what we are learning from Google as well.
Thank you so much for that question. I've been in the tech industry now for about a year or so, and I've been asking that question often. I worked prior in finance and in media and entertainment. And when I joined, I was so proud of joining Google and knowing that in 2014 we were the first company to release our numbers, and that was a call to action to organizations across the board. We have since, in the past year, engaged with partners and colleagues, and we connect and we share, but we could do certainly a whole lot more. I am really proud that the the Historically Black Colleges and Universities Initiative, and now what we're moving forward with our HSIs, a lot of that model we've been sharing with our colleagues across Silicon Valley, and so some initiatives are now going to be launched similar to what we launched in other HBCUs. So we are learning and partnering with each other, but we certainly can help amplify and drive that work even further, because as you've heard all of us say here, we're all doing a lot of similar things, and we're all trying to tackle the same problem and the same challenges, but we certainly have unique opportunities to tie together and really build a much more amplified progress across the way.
One of the things we've been doing together for a long time, and companies like AT&T and Comcast, Verizon, on a daily basis might be fierce competitors in the market. But it's really great when we come together and fund and help support the LULAC Tech Centers, the NCLR STEM work. I could go on, it's a long list, SPEDA, the charter schools, small business coalitions, et cetera. We've been doing this for a while, and it's wonderful to see how we put our guard down, we kind of leave our guns at the door, and we come together for these kinds of efforts. So,
one of the things I'm really pleased about the Castellano Family Foundation are actually our efforts to partner with the Congressional Hispanic Caucus Institute, which has done some work in this arena, and last year in 2015 held a tech summit out in Silicon Valley to raise awareness on this issue. And it's really wonderful to have members of Congress involved in advancing this particular agenda. So our foundation has brought in the Silicon Valley Community Foundation, which is the largest community foundation in the world and located in the heart of Silicon Valley. Valley, to work to support the Congressional Hispanic Caucus Institute as they move forward with this tech initiative, ultimately publish a paper on the diversity in tech issue and advance the issue through another diversity in tech event that will be happening next spring. So I agree with you, philanthropy does need to come together, and certainly the technology companies will be involved in this initiative as well.
There's also great work being led in startups. I'd like to make sure that we emphasize that as well. We all have very established companies that are doing amazing work, but as a lot of these startups start really building their own ecosystems and building towards becoming the large companies that they are going to become, I think it's really lovely to see them starting to build their structures and processes in a much more inclusive way, and it seems really promising right now.
Absolutely. Other questions from the audience?
Good afternoon. My name is Rosa Hernandez with Hope Cohort 2016 and Mana de San Diego. My question is, everyone on that panel is extremely successful. It is said that success is failure turned inside out. Can you share with us some of your biggest failures and how do you become a success?
How long do we have?
Yeah.
You know, look, I think the difference for somebody in my time and generation is a little different than what you face, because I think we're in a very different world right now. Disruption is faster. Companies that, you know, automakers are investing in Uber and Lyft because they know there's disruption coming. The lifetime of a Fortune 500 used to be about 50 to 60 years. Today it's about 15. So it's disrupt or get disrupted. My point is, when you're in an environment where the margins are much broader, you can make a lot more mistakes. I think in today's world, you got to get things, the margins are tighter. So, you know, I've been lucky. I've made a lot of mistakes, most of those that I can recover from. But you bring up a good point, which is we have to instill in our kids that it's okay to take chances, that it's okay to get it wrong. And I think that mindset will work well in the tech world, and I think you all would agree, right?
Absolutely. I think it's really easy to look at the positions that we're in now and think that we've always been in these senior leadership positions. We all started in junior positions, and we all, you know, I started like you were mentioning earlier, in a line position in finance and moved my way up and have taken risks in my career, have switched industry 3 times now, some successfully, some not that successfully perhaps, but have all created that next step for me career-wise. And what's distinguished that across the board has been really just stepping up every day, learning from them, and moving forward. I remember when I was a junior analyst at Moody's, and I was about to get promoted, the senior manager said, "You've been under the radar this whole time. So the failures that you've had now, the mistakes that you've made are now going to be much more amplified the more that you move up in the ranks." And I would say that that's what happens as you move up the ranks. It becomes a lot more, the optics are a lot more focused on you, and the attention of an audiences like this are a lot more around, you know, what are you doing and how are you delivering. But however, I think it's important, you're absolutely right to note that we've made mistakes, we've chosen 1 or 2 different, you know, incorrect actions along the way. But I think that what distinguishes us is resilience, is grit, and it's really building upon the partnerships and the community that we have to continue to lift ourselves up.
Other examples, other mistakes to be shared?
So I think very, very similar. I think, throughout my career, I've been at Intel since I was out of college. Do not have a technical degree, but every one of the positions that I've had has had a technical job code associated with them. So I think through taking risks with different career moves, yeah, absolutely, there have been mistakes made and there have been learnings. You know, one that I can recall is, I remember I'm very much an inclusive individual and very much a collaborative individual. And one particular time there was a certain position that I was very, very interested in, and I went through the formal process. And in the interview, I was actually I made it to the very end, and the other individual was selected who happened to be a white male. But the one individual who was a vice president actually took me aside and said, Imelda, I need to give you some advice. And to me, I have really learned from that. She said, Imelda, you are such a woman. She said, in the interview, both of you had very similar backgrounds, but what you did was when you talked about your leadership, you attributed your leadership to your team, and you talked about your team. And the other individual really talked about how they led their team and what they did to inspire them. So it was, to me, it was an opportunity to learn from kind of my mistakes in terms of how I sold myself for an opportunity.
Well, speaking of leadership, I would say that has been one of my great challenges over the years, is really how to try to learn, evolve, and grow, and to be a better leader. I became CEO around the age of 30. I've been pretty much running organizations from the beginning, but you don't learn how to do that in law school and undergraduate. So it's really on-the-job training, trial by fire. And so having made mistakes along the way, certainly what I've learned is that it's always important to be in that learning, growing mode. You could always be a better leader. And I certainly, even after 25 years of my career, feel that I still have a long way to go to be the inspiring leader that I want to be. So I think it's just a continual learning process. You need to learn from your failures. I don't forget those leadership struggles that I had along the way, and I am still constantly trying to correct myself and be better and grow.
Wonderful. So we have time for just one more question, and then we will wrap up our lunch.
Hi, I'm Pepe Estrada with Washington and Lee University. First of all, I want to express my profound thanks to Google. Junior year of high school, during that summer, I was able to participate in the MIT Online Science and Technology Summit at MIT, and that was sponsored by Google. That was actually where I got my first experience with kind of STEM at that level. And I'm now a computer science and economics major at my university. Obviously, not every student will have the opportunity to go to a program like MOSTEC. So my question for you is, how do we change the culture around the STEM field? Because oftentimes, computer scientists in particular are stereotyped as white males. So how do we change that in the culture to get more people interested from the base level? Because that's really where the change needs to happen.
And I'll ask each of you to kind of offer an answer and also just offer a quick wrap-up.
Sure. I'm so glad that first of all, thank you. This is exactly why we do the work that we do. So I'm glad to hear not only that you were able to participate in the program, but that it's helped shift your future. We do have a CS and Media initiative precisely targeted at shifting perceptions of CS and media. And so we have programs that we've launched in partnership with Hollywood and other media companies to actually just not only change the perception of what a computer scientist looks like, so that they look like us, that they look like your neighbor, your tia, your tío. But we're also very actively, again, engaging, as I mentioned earlier, in a lot of the unconscious bias work with the companies that we work with, so that it's addressed from the early development stage of the creative and throughout every message point that we can drive. And I think that helps not only shift the perceptions of our young kids, who all of a sudden start seeing themselves as having opportunities to do this, but also the parents who can help prepare them so that they can become ready for those roles when they come about. And then also for the folks when you're in college and university and trying to decide, what am I going to major in? Who am I going to be? So that you start seeing yourself reflected. Gina Davis has an institute of women in media. And what she says was that when a lot of the CSI programs started coming out on TV, for those of you who are TV buffs, all of a sudden there were CSI majors popping up in every university and program. And guess what? a lot of women were taking part in these programs because they were starting to see themselves as being able to have these roles. So I think that's critical. It's a way of shifting the culture. We shift the culture every day, not just by the media messages that we're putting out there, but by the presentations that we're making, by the products that we're developing, by the narratives that we're building, by the media that we're helping support. And so I'm glad that it was able to support you, and it's part of the work that we're trying to do at Google. Again, I'm really glad to have been part. I'm closing because you told me to close out. I'm really glad to have been part of this, and I encourage all of you, if you're interested in a career in the technology space, whether you're a technologist or not, really engage with us, connect with us, look into opportunities in our programs, and whenever any of our programs are in your local communities, we have and if any of you are interested in supporting nonprofits, we have a wonderful program called the RISE Awards that's run through our diversity K-12 program, which encourages local nonprofits to help support STEM-related activities. So there's a lot of involvement and engagement in your communities. You just have to reach out, get engaged and involved, and help shift the landscape of this industry.
So I'll end where I started, which is progress, diversity, and inclusion doesn't happen by accident. It takes hard work and design and a blueprint. I think the pipeline issue you mentioned is pretty much well on its way. Today, 50% of STEM college graduates are women and minorities. It's going to have to increase because of the changing demographics and the needs of the workplace, but 10 years ago, it was a much bleaker picture. So when I look at Congressman Hinojosa right here, who's been talking about this for many years to when it was not popular, the leadership starts there. And I think these kinds of convenings are really important. You know, the challenges your generation will face are going to be global, and they're going to be fast, and they're going to require the collaboration not only of government, private, public, but also the collaboration of countries. So, you know, I think anytime our kids are well equipped to go out into that world and be ambassadors, if you will, not only as Latinos, but as Americans and as global citizens, if these kinds of convenings can help us get the ideas and the energy behind it, I think it's time well spent, and congratulations on your MIT.
I continue to believe, and our foundation believes, that investing in the local nonprofit sector that is involved at the ground level in the community, providing exposure to young people such as yourselves to opportunities and educating them so that they can see themselves in this area, enhancing their skills, exposing them to programs is absolutely critical, and we need to keep doing more and more of that. And in Silicon Valley, a bigger investment in that is absolutely essential for our future. And really, the reason why we believe so strongly in this is our future depends on it. With 57 million Latinos already in the state of California, half the growth that's happened since the year 2000 has been due to the Latino community. Latinos and our youth are the future of our country. And so to have these huge inequities in all arenas that we've talked about today beyond tech, but in all sectors, is really a failure for our entire country and has huge implications for our future, for our economic development. It's an equity issue across the board. And so this is something that really a wake-up call to all of us, that this is not a new situation. Our challenges that we have faced have been going on for decades, and they are not getting better at a level that is anywhere keeping up with our population growth. And yet in a state like California, and increasingly in many states across the country, Latinos and Latino youth are the future. So it is absolutely essential, and I really commend the Congressional Hispanic Caucus for taking this issue on and continuing to shed light, because I think in the halls of Congress, it is so critical that we recognize that something must be done. The future of our country depends on it.
So in terms of changing the culture and the landscape, as you asked, my perspective is very similar to what Daisy shared, is that we've got to change the perception of our students in school. And I think for me, it's very similar to what Intel is trying to do right now, where for years and years, Intel was perceived as just a PC company. And right now, we're completely reinventing ourselves. So we're focused on the Internet of Things. We're focused on sports, fashion, we're everywhere where Intel needs a connection. So I think that type of impetus is needed as well for this industry. Just some closing thoughts for all of you. I think, like me, throughout my career, I've attended conferences and caucuses like this, and I really encourage each of you to make sure that you're taking away key nuggets that you can go back to, whether you're in a company, you're in a foundation, you're involved in an educational program, whatever, and make sure that you take the learnings and you do something with them. And more importantly, that whatever generation, whether you're a millennial or you're later in life, take back with you just the opportunity and the responsibility that you have to pay it forward and to bring other Latinos forward in this industry. The population is growing, and we all need to be mentors and to be sponsors for the Latinos coming behind us.
And let me just say, so three of the things that particularly stand out for me about your discussion are mentorship, equity, and risk-taking. I heard almost every one of you talk about the realities of the need for mentors, the reality of equity in the future of our economy, right? That we're talking about literally the future of economic opportunity, and risk-taking, in that each of you are representing large institutions that are taking risks, investing in things and people, startups, ideas, opportunities, and we also have a responsibility as CHCI alums and as Latinos who are making our way in a whole new environment to take risks, to help solve this problem. So I want to thank you all, and thank you all for participating in this discussion as well.